Okay, welcome back to a new Python tutorial. In this video, I would like to go into one topic which is very important. Whenever you do programming in every kind of programming language, you will have to deal with files. So in this case, I would like to go a little bit into details regarding file handling in Python, and you will see that it's quite simple, maybe much easier than in other programming languages. So in Python, you can just easily access any file by just giving a name to a variable. Let's call it just file, but of course you can also give any other name to that. And then we have to write equal open. So in this case, we get access to that file. And then we have to insert a string here. And this string contains the file name that we want to access. So let's suppose we call that just output.txt because we want to store data into this file. And what I always recommend is to directly also close that file. So sometimes people forget that, and then this can lead to several bugs and problems. So it's always better to directly close it and then write the code that you want to apply on this file between these two lines here. And this we will do now also. And now if we want to store just a simple word into this file, so we can write here file.write. This is the command or the function for writing something into a file. And then we can insert, for example, a string or an integer or anything like that. But in this case, we just use a string. So we can write here write, for example, hello. And now when you run the program, you will see that actually Python gives you an error message. And the reason for this is because whenever you specify a file in this way, then the standard configuration is that Python opens this file in the read mode, which means you cannot write anything into that file, and it's also not created. And the reason for that is just because of security. So Python wants to avoid problems of creating files where maybe you don't want to create them, and you also don't want to maybe overwrite important data. So it's always much better to open it in the read mode. And if you want to avoid this, and if you want to really create this file and write something into that file, you have to insert a second parameter into this open function here. And this is called W for write. And now we run the program again, and you will see now here, I open this Explorer here in Visual Code on the left side, and then it automatically updates whenever a new file is created. So in this case, we get now a new output.txt file, and the input here is hello. And now we can also run this several times, and every time when you go to this file, you will see that nothing has changed. It's still hello included. We can also, of course, write another word into this, maybe in this case world. And when we compile this again and we go here, you can see that now both lines, although we put them here in separate lines, they are attached here together. And the reason is because, of course, Python doesn't know that there should be a line break. So we have to manually do that by, for example, writing here \n. And when we now compile this, now you see that we jump to the next line. So this you always have to keep in mind when you deal with file output or data output into files. Okay, now we can also maybe add another line here just to show how it works. But in principle, we know now the fundamental principles. So we can write maybe here another line. How are you? So now we can run it again, just check it, and it looks exactly how we expect that. And now I want to show you how to read out the data again. So we can either create now a new file, or we can just edit below that. And we can just create a new variable. Maybe this time we just call it f to distinguish it from the previously created one. And then we can write here open. And we have to, of course, open our output.txt file. And then we can either let it like this. Then, as we said, it automatically opens it in read mode. Or we write here string r, which means then read. And as I said, again, we want to always close that. And now we can put our code in between these two lines. So we can write here, there are now many possibilities how to read out this file. You can, for example, just write f dot read. Yeah, and this gives you a string. So let's call this variable just maybe s. And yeah, then this stores the whole file, the content of this file in this string s. And then we can write print s. And when we run our program, then you can see now it just prints out the content of the file. Yeah? So this is in principle very easy. Yeah, we can also read out only a certain amount of characters of that file. So if you write, for example, f.read and then in parentheses, let's suppose 10, it means it will only read out the first 10 characters of that file. And if we run this, now you see hello world and it stops here. Yeah? So it's also very simple. This is very powerful possibility how to do that. But I will also explain you a few other things now, how to read out a file. Yeah, so another powerful function is called Readline. So it reads out the file line by line. So again, it creates a string. So we store this in our variable s. So we can write here, for example, readline, and then without any argument. And if we run now our program, you can see now here, it just prints out hello. Yeah? And then we can, for example, copy and paste that and, below that, and now run again. Now you see first it prints out hello and then it prints out world. Yeah, just here in the it goes through this text file line by line, and now here it reads out the first line and stores it in s, prints it, then it reads out the second line, stores it in s and prints it, and so on. Yeah, so this is in principle quite easy, I think, to understand. But there is another version of this function readline, and this is called read lines. Yeah, so in this case, it reads out all lines and stores this in an array. Yeah, and this maybe we can still call s. So now we can write print s, and when we run that, now you see that you have an array or a list. Sorry, it's actually a list where you have three items. The first one is hello \n for this line break, world, and then how are you. So every line creates a single item in this list. And this is quite powerful because now you can do some data analysis even with this if you have the data in a structured form. Later I will also explain in one of the next videos maybe how to read out structured files if you have a comma separated values, for example. But for the time being we will only stick to standard files here. Yeah, so instead of writing print s, we can now also write for line in, okay, let's maybe don't call it s, maybe call it lines, and then for line in lines, and then we can print out only line. And now you see that it prints out every line separately. So now we can get access to every item of this list and we can manipulate this, we can get access to that and so on. So this is again another very powerful possibility how to handle files. The only disadvantage of this method is that it reads out the file completely, stores it in a list or in an array, and then you can go through all the items and manipulate it, which is of course which maybe consumes a lot of memory depending how large your file is. Yeah? Therefore, there is a better approach to do that. So instead of storing all the lines in a list, we can just write it like this: f equals open and so on. And then we can write for line in f and then print line again. So now it does the same job, but it only access every line when it goes through this file and does not store it in our memory. And this is much more efficient depending on the file size, as I said, or if you want to do some memory efficient programming, maybe it's even faster. One should benchmark this also, but I think this is a better possibility how to do this. Nevertheless, depending on what you want to do, you maybe want to take the one or the other approach. But also the readability here is much better. So especially when you want to give your code to someone or people work together on code and for maintenance purpose, for example, this is, I think, the much better solution here. Okay, some people do it also in a different way. Yeah, so this works perfectly fine. Yeah, you can use this code as it is, but sometimes, as I said, it's very common that people forget to close the file, and this can lead to really huge problems. sometimes. So there is another approach. Instead of closing the file explicitly, we can also change this line here in with open, this with statement, very important statement, open output.txt. Then we can also remove that one here. SF, for example. And then we can write, for example, for line in F, and then print line. And if we then run our program, the output is the same. Yeah. So now we don't, the only difference to the previous code is that we now don't have to explicitly close the file, and to avoid problems just by forgetting that. I'm also sometimes I'm using both approaches depending on my mood actually, but this is I think the better way how to do that. Okay, now I have explained how you can store data in a file and how you can read it back. But one thing I would like to explain here, in this case, as I said, R stands for read, W stands for write, and there is another parameter that you can hand over, and this is called A for append. So you can also actually append things to an existing file. So you can write now, if we don't change anything in the code and run it, we expect now that, as you can see here, it just appends the content that we have written down here to the output.txt file instead of overwriting that. And we can do this several times, and now you see that every time it adds the content there, which is written here. So append is also a very powerful parameter. If we then, however, go back to W and start it again, everything is deleted, the file is recreated, and we can see only now the output that we have seen before. So it's very important to take care of these parameters and not to mix them. There's also another one, just for completeness, I want to explain that, which is called X, and this means that now the file should be created, and when you run the code and the file exists already, then it gives you explicitly an error message. So I would not know in which case it's really important to do that. I mean, I never came to a specific use case, but I think in some cases maybe it might be important to do it. So this error message means the file exists. However, we could now delete that file and run it again. And if we do that now, it will just do the same as before. It will create the file, it will write into that file, and everything is the same, but for convenience, maybe we go back to the W parameter. Now here we created that file, but now let's suppose we want to delete this after creating it. Maybe we just want to buffer something. So now the question is how we do that. There is no built-in function in Python to do this, as in the same way how we have done it for writing and reading. So for that we need a module, and this is called OS, and as far as I know it stands for operating system. So this gives you quite a lot of functions which you can use, and one of them is called remove. So now we write here os.remove, and then we have to insert a string, which is our file output.txt. And if we run now our program, you will see now the file has been created for a few milliseconds, and then it has been deleted again. So this is a powerful command. If the file does not exist, it will give you an error message. So let's suppose we actually comment this out and start this here, then you see that now it says output.txt cannot be deleted because it doesn't exist. And for this we can also of course find a workaround, and we have to write here an if condition os.path. So there is a submodule called path to check whether a path exists, which means a file. And now we can write here output.txt. So if it exists, then it should remove it, or else we can write an error message. For example, file does not exist. And then we can run this. Now you can see it says file does not exist because it was not created before. But if we remove all the comments here and run our program again, it creates this file and deletes it, so it doesn't give you an error message. Everything works perfectly fine. Now, as a last part, I would also like to explain how you can create not only files but also folders. So we write here os.mkdir, the same command which you also use in Linux, make directory, for creating a path or directory. And now we create here a directory which we call maybe files. We don't have to make a slash here, I think. If we run this program, you can see now we have a directory here, and we can, of course, also this part maybe we delete here again, so we don't want to delete the output file. And then we can write here open files/output.txt. And if you run this, we get an error message just because the directory already exists. So we can either check if it's existing, or we can, of course, just in this case, delete it. So I can also explain you the command for deleting something. This is rmdir for remove directory. And we can write here files. So first it removes the directory, then it makes the directory, and then it creates the output file, as you can see, output.txt in the files folder. So this is, I think, most of the things which you want to do in Python you can handle with these easy functions and modules. So now you also know about this OS module, and you can also find a lot of information on the internet about this, what to do with that. I really propose also to get into the manual and try to figure out what is the purpose of this module. Okay. And with this I want to close the video. I hope that you learned a lot of new things. I hope it was not too fast and you were able to follow everything. Just as usual, try to play with all these commands a little bit, try to create your own output, read it back in and so on, so you get a feeling for that. And if you have any further questions about reading, writing files, please put it into the comment section. Of course, if you like the video, as usual, hit the like button, subscribe my channel if you have not done so far, and hopefully see you very soon for a next video.